All right, hello, I'm the silverkyle, and welcome to my weekly update for January 29th, 2024. We've got two books here that I have been reading in the past week. I did finish up one of them as well. Then we're going to dive into what I plan to read next, talk a little bit about the videos that I did last week and what I have planned for this week. And I have quite a few videos that I hope to do this week here, so we'll see how that goes. And then we'll finally end this off with some WWE news, because the Royal Rumble happened this Saturday. I did watch it. And on top of that, we have some major news, both very positive and very horribly negative. So we'll dive into that at the very end. So let's start this off with the book that I finished this week, that being Only If You're Lucky by Stacey Willingham. And I had started this the week prior. In my last update, I had said that I was about 70 pages in, and I was hoping that the book would start to pick up because it wasn't diving into the mystery, the whole point of why you're reading a mystery thriller. And unfortunately, it took another 130 pages on top of that. At about the 200 page mark, we finally dived into the mystery. And once we were there, we were sticking with that until the very end. So I was happy once I got there, just unfortunately took quite a while before we got to that point. And then the ending was kind of lukewarm for me. It didn't really work for me. So I didn't enjoy this book as much as I wanted to. I'm definitely not done with Stacey Willingham, though. I will definitely read A Flicker in the Dark. And if the next book that she makes has an interesting premise, I think that I'll pick that one up as well. So it's just unfortunate that this book didn't exactly hit what I wanted to. It was all right. I'll dive a little bit more into this when I do review it. Although I think that because I have so many videos planned, this won't be for another week before I do the review for it. So I've got quite a few videos planned in the next little while. Let's dive into the other book that I read quite a bit of in this past week, and that is The Empire of the Vampire. I feel like in the last week I did read a lot. Like I read 300 pages of that, another 200 and change of this. I wanted to read more, but both books were kind of just like, eh. And after the Atlas 6, I mean, that was just a downhill. So unfortunately, I just haven't really read anything that I'm really enjoying quite a bit of. I want to enjoy this. And I did like this more than I did Only If You're Lucky. But it's still, even the halfway mark, I'm literally right in the middle. I think I'm at like 366 and there's 368 pages left to go before I'm done. So literally in the middle. And while there's parts here and there where there's a big battle that happens, or there's something world building related in terms of the religion or some of the weapons that they use against the vampires, or how the order works, how the vampires work, because there's a whole system and they all have specific powers. They all have their different classes. I really like all of that. It's just the writing for me in this book, I think, isn't for me. And I think it would work for a lot of people. So I don't think that this is one of those situations where it's bad writing. It's not. It just doesn't work for me, as I'm always just like not being connected to it. There are certain authors that I really click with and others that just don't really hit well for me, even though I can appreciate that what he's writing is fairly good. There's a lot of, it's very brutal. And I don't mind that at all. I actually quite like it when it's right. There's also a lot of swearing. And the swearing can work sometimes. But when you're overly doing it, and specifically the main character, Gabriel, is constantly talking to characters that he doesn't care for. But when he's constantly doing the quips, if he's doing it in a fun, it sounds like he's doing it in a fun way all the time. And because he's swearing so often, sometimes when he's talking to somebody that I think he absolutely should be hating, and I think he does hate them quite a bit, because the author alludes to this quite often, but because he's swearing in such like to me, a fun way, it seems like it takes away the edge of the seriousness of what I think this world is supposed to be. I think that there's too much humor in this, and maybe that's not the point of this, but it feels like it's way too, for how brutal this world is and how much, it's a very mature book because of like, there's constant swearing. It's very brutal in terms of the gore that happens, and it works really well for this book. And there's sex and everything like that, and it goes quite into a lot of bit of detail, but the swearing just keeps pulling me back and making me think that it's a comedy book. I just don't think that it works for the tone of what this book should be. So it's okay. I don't know if I'm going to continue after this. We're going to see at the very end but it's more so the writing that just isn't jiving with me, essentially. All right, so what will I be reading next while I'm reading The Empire of the Vampire? Because I'm still wanting to finish up some other things. The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, I'm still only about 50 pages in. I haven't read it last week at all. I wanted to finish up Only If You're Lucky. I was hoping that if I eliminated that book, it would make things easier. And just, it sucked my soul a little bit too much. Same thing with The Empire of the Vampire. Not bad books, it's just not connecting with me. The nice thing is that for the 50 pages that I did read of this the week prior, I was really enjoying. And here's an example of the writing being extremely detailed, and it kind of takes a little bit out of me because it's so deep. There's so much depth here. I love the writing. Tolkien is a masterclass at writing, and while it takes a lot out of me, it's in a positive way. So at least I'll have this to kind of coincide with The Empire of the Vampire, but I kind of want, like, the whole point of why I brought this one in is because I wanted some light reading, which it was, but I just didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. Because I like to have something that's very deep or hard to read mixed in with something that is fairly simple that I'm enjoying, hopefully. That was the goal. And I do think as well, and I know that this is the whole point of me bringing this guy in and finishing it, was so that I could only have 2 books to focus on. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to be bringing in a third anyway. And that is The Shining by Stephen King, because the friend that I wanted to read this with has just ordered his copy. It's coming in today, actually, January 29th. He should have it. And we convinced another one of our friends to start reading, and he's already more than 100 pages in. He got it on Sunday and he just dived into it, or maybe he might have gotten it on Saturday. That might have been the case. So we have some catching up to do, and I can't. If I convince 2 people to read this, I have to dive into it at the same time. So I'm gonna have a lot of reading to do, and I don't know if I'll have anything done by my next update. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But I'll at least have 3 books, and then all of a sudden I'll have 3 books done in a week. That could happen. So let's see how that goes in the next week. In terms of videos that I produced this week, probably my favorite one to do was the Atlas 6. I was brutal in that. That was essentially a rant. That wasn't a review. To me, that was a rant, but it's because I just felt so passionate, and it has felt so good to get that off of my chest, to talk about that. So I'm feeling good at this point in time. And just knowing that I'll never have to read anything by that author again has really helped me along. And that has been kind of my therapy, if you will. In terms of videos for this week, so we've got this update for Monday. For Tuesday, I've got something in the mail coming for an omnibus for Clone Saga Volume 1. So that is coming. I definitely want to do an overview for that. So whenever I get that, once I get it, I'll do an overview for the next date. So that'll either be on Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm thinking is when I'll be having that. Then we've got my TBR for February. So we're going to go over all the books that I'm planning to read in the month of February. It's going to be kind of hard to kind of figure out how many books I might get to, because I'm probably going to have some stragglers along with these 3 books that I'm reading here at the moment. Although The Shining is now, I would say, a February read. I guess I just started in January, but I'll mention it in my TBR for February. Then we've got all my pickups that I want to do either on the Wednesday or on the 1st of February. We could do that as well, depending on how things go. And then I want to talk about my January wrap-up, where I kind of go over everything that I read in the month of January, and then I can have all the links for the reviews that I have for the specific books, because I'll be at 3 or 4 books probably for the month of January, which isn't bad. I kind of wanted a little bit more, but I'm okay with that at the moment. And that's pretty much it. And then if we get some time, this could be like a Saturday review that if I'm able to do 1 video per day until Saturday, we might be seeing a review for this by that point in time. So we'll see how that goes. And that's it for what I have planned for the future. Let's dive into some WWE news. So for those of you that don't watch wrestling, you can hop on out. But the Saturday Royal Rumble happened. Let's dive into that first because I enjoyed it. Parts of it anyway. I liked a lot of the decisions that were kind of made, and some matches were good. Some of them were just kind of, it felt like a lot like filler. And that's kind of unfortunate because the Royal Rumble to me is almost bigger than WrestleMania in the sense that it's just so exciting to see who's going to, like, the Royal Rumble match is an insane amount of fun. And we get two of them now. We get the women's match and the men's match. We started off with the women's match, and that was, to me, the match of the night. They did a much better job than the men's. There was more surprises. We got the TNA, Naomi came back. So she's back into WWE. We had some NXT people show up as well. And we had, what's her name? The TNA Women's Champion showing up. And I mean, we've had Mickie James show up as the TNA Knockouts Champion before in a Rumble, which was kind of cool. But we are like, she's part of WWE, whereas this one, it's somebody that has never been part of WWE before. So it felt kind of cool. I was hoping for more. I was really hoping that we would maybe get one more TNA knockout women's wrestler coming out as a surprise. And same thing for the men's. I was really hoping that we would get somebody, Alex Shelley, Chris Sabin, Ziggler would have been great. I mean, that would be kind of weird. They just let him go and then he's back already for like a one night. Still, I don't know if he'd be up to that. Like, you just let me go and now I'm in this other company and you're bringing me back. It would be kind of weird to do it right away, but I think that would have been awesome. Granted, Nick Nemeth's like Dolph Ziggler's name in real life name, but in TNA, his music there is not nearly as good as his Dolph Ziggler song. So I almost feel like if you brought him back in WWE, you'd have to give him the Ziggler music. Just give that music to TNA. If you're open to this partnership, it helps a lot with, pay a certain amount. Ziggler should totally pay for that theme song because it's so good. I'm here to show the world. Like, it's so Ziggler, and it really works well for his character in the WWE. And I think for TNA that he wants to prove himself, in this essential, I don't know, almost like a Shawn Michaels. He's older though. He's much older than Shawn Michaels was when Michaels came back for his second run in WWE to prove kind of that he could hang with everybody, and he could. Shawn Michaels was absolutely excellent. 2002 to 2010. The amount of good wrestling that you had from Shawn Michaels during that time, and before too. I mean, he was much more athletic in the mid 90s. And he could sell like an insane amount. But with his second run, while he wasn't as athletic and as crisp in the ring, maybe. I mean, he was great. I'm only comparing it to Shawn Michaels of the 90s. Like, Shawn Michaels of the 90s is up here. It's beyond the wall here, beyond the ceiling, by far. So when I say that, it's just the 90s Shawn Michaels was incredible. And I feel that his selling in the 2000s was still excellent and top notch, and all the moves that he did were really good too, but it was more so him understanding more the psychology of wrestling matches that really bumped up his matches later on in his career. Anyway, let's dive back into the Rumble here. So we've got the women's match, and Jade Cargill came out. Awesome. That was awesome. I was very happy to see her. She did a good job, a good showing. The crowd popped for her. Her little scuffle, I think, with Nia Jax, and just lifting her up, throwing her, and then kicking her, I think, and then picking her up once again and throwing her out of the ring again, showing how incredibly powerful she is, was done to perfection. This is why you brought back Nia Jax, was to have this moment. Nia Jax, I think, has been doing an okay job. I wish she was a little bit safer in the ring. That's the only thing that kind of worries me a little bit. But outside of that, I think she's having a good run here, and to put Jade over, that was perfect. And Jade didn't need to win here. I was very happy with Bayley winning, because Bayley, I feel, as a heel in the past, ever since she came back from injury, she has been dynamite, completely on fire, and she's been putting so many people over. And while I can appreciate that, you got to reward this girl for doing such a good job. And I don't think she should have been losing that much throughout this entire time. She just put over like Bianca a crazy amount. And just one of my favorite scenes from her from last year was when Io Sky was finally cashing in at SummerSlam, and they come running out and Bailey has the briefcase and she's just smashing everybody. It was great stuff. I really enjoyed that quite a bit. Excellent character. Really looking forward to most likely her turning face, because the Damage Control is going to betray her, and you've got Io Sky versus Bailey. Io Sky does not seem like a main, like, she's fine, but she does not seem like the kind of character that should be on WrestleMania as the women's champion. In a multi-man match, sure. In a tag team match for the tag titles for the women's division, that'd be fine. I could get that behind that completely, but in terms of her having this one of the bigger women's matches of WrestleMania for WrestleMania 40, just doesn't seem right. So that's just my even though Bailey and her really that's the whole point of this storyline that will make it work. She herself isn't high enough on the poll, in my opinion. In terms of, then we had the Fatal 4-Way for the WWE Championship. It ended exactly how we expected it to. Wasn't a great match, as we expected that it wouldn't, because it's Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns is all about just the interference, about almost losing, but prevailing at the end, as boring as his title reign has been. If he beats Cody at WrestleMania 40 again, and because they want him to beat Hulk Hogan's record, it's not true. He had the Universal Championship first, and the WWE title he only won in 2022. So he will not be surpassing Hogan's reign. He'll surpass the reign, if you want to talk about it, for a world title in the WWE. Yes, the Universal reign will be longer than Hogan's if he decides to, or if they decide to keep him champion until, I think, September of this year. But, and how could they do that? Reigns is the most garbage champion ever. The only reason why people are caring at all is because he's held the title for so long, and they just want somebody else. You're holding down so many people that could draw you so much more money than Roman. When Roman leaves, the WWE is doing fine. They're still pulling in record numbers. They're still doing great. It has nothing to do with Roman. Roman could fuck off for 2 years and nobody would notice, because he's left numerous times before, and WWE did fine. And I think right now it would thrive because you've got LA Knight, you've got a returning Randy Orton. That I think a lot of people would love for him to have another run. Styles hasn't looked this good in a long time. And then you've got Kevin Owens, who I think a lot of people would love for him to go back on top. You've got Sami Zayn, who totally, I think, needs at least one run, small championship run, as the top guy, but he needs a really good underdog story. So you've got to set up another heel, and I mean, it would have worked the best against Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns losing against Sami Zayn would have been massive last year. Same thing with Cody. I think that it would have just done so many wonders for that. They decided to keep it on him for whatever reason, because they wanted to build up Cody. And I think that last year would have been a lot hotter in terms of the win. It's going to be hard to say, because what I feel is going to happen is that we're going to get The Rock to possibly show up and help Cody win at WrestleMania 40 to set up another match with The Rock down the line next year at WrestleMania. That's what I feel happens. Or maybe are they going to go to a Saudi show? I mean, the Saudis would certainly pay The Rock quite a bit of money, probably $5 million to wrestle. So I could see that potentially happening. We'll see. We had the Fatal 4-Way. Then we had the U.S. title match between Logan Paul, Kevin Owens. Kind of garbage. At least they saved Kevin Owens by not having... Logan Paul couldn't even beat Ricochet without cheating. So there's no way that him beating Kevin Owens clean would have made sense here. And they have to keep his title reign going. I'm thinking that they're setting up Logan Paul versus LA Knight at WrestleMania and have LA Knight win his first, title on the main roster. To me, that's kind of what I'm thinking that they're going with. We'll see. And then we finally had the Men's Royal Rumble, where there was no big surprises at all. I mean, Andrade, did anybody care? Did anybody ever care? He wasn't a big guy in WWE. He wasn't a big guy in AEW. He is essentially, they're going to try to push him and he won't go anywhere because he's not the guy. Could he have a U.S. title or Intercontinental Championship run? I would say a few years ago he could have, but because that they're trying to push those titles as with big reigns and stuff, like because Gunther has elevated the Intercontinental Championship a crazy amount, and even the U.S. title has been looking fairly strong because of longer reigns that they've had for a lot of the previous champions. You know, Seth Rollins was champion, then we had Austin Theory for quite a long time. I think that people got sick of Theory because they weren't using him properly to kind of defend that championship. I think that they could have done a lot more with that title reign, but whatever. And then Rey Mysterio had a little bit of time with it, and finally went to Logan Paul. So let's kind of see what Logan can do with this, because I think Logan's excellent as a heel. He works really well for that. They need to have him start beating some people clean, though, that actually makes sense. Like Ricochet, he should have destroyed at SummerSlam. Like, that was so stupid that he had to cheat to beat Ricochet, the jobber of jobbers. Who is the last person that Ricochet has beat that was like more than a mid-carder? Has that ever happened? My God, he is the jobber of jobbers. Anyway, and then, yeah, Royal Rumble match, number 28 is Ricochet. Or 29. Was he 29? That's even worse if he was 29. I can't remember exactly. He was near the end, and I was like, you're wasting it on Ricochet? Nobody cares. Nobody cares about Ricochet. So we had Andrade. He was, I guess, the biggest surprise that we had for the men's, and that's just boring. Sami Zayn came back, I guess, from injury at number 30. At least he's a big enough wrestler, but I don't think anybody cared. Braun Breaker had a good showing. That was at least a good part for the Rumble. And then the last four was, probably the problem with this Rumble is that you could have had so many people that were in there that were big guys, right? You could have, if you would have had AJ Styles versus Roman Reigns, and then you could have had Kevin Owens, I think, in the Rumble instead of against Logan Paul. I think even having Logan Paul instead of a U.S. title match, they should have a women's match, honestly. They should have had a women's match instead of that U.S. title. Because then you could have Kevin Owens, Logan Paul, both in this, and you have the last 10 people with Kevin Owens and Logan Paul, because Logan Paul is a little shit heel, and him trying to, throw some big people out would have gained more heat. I think that could have been really interesting. Same thing with Kevin Owens, having him in there just with returning Sami Zayn. You could have had that little moment, build that up, and then you would have then had Randy Orton, a returning Randy Orton, right? Because he just came back recently, and LA Knight near the end. You would have had a crazy amount of hype going into this. Lots. They did still end it with the four guys that were in there that were the strongest, but after that, there was nobody else that I think anybody thought could win. Like, Drew most likely wasn't going to win unless it was against Seth, and that's only if Cody and Punk were not going to win so that they could have their match, right? And then The Rock was coming back or something like that to face Roman at WrestleMania, but it doesn't look like that's happening for this year anyway. Doesn't look like it, we'll see, but I don't think that's happening. And then Gunther. Gunther, I think that a lot of people thought that there was a chance there too. Glad he made it to the fatal, to the last four. Same thing with Drew. Drew's been on fire as a heel too, so was happy with that. And finally, Cody won. Very happy for him. I mean, out of all the people, I want Cody to beat Roman. I do not want The Rock versus Cody or versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40 at all. If they want to do it next year, go nuts. Not without the title. Just as long as Cody finally gets the title off of Roman Reigns, we need that to happen no matter what. And I think it's going to happen at this point in time because that they built it like 2 wins in a row at Royal Rumble. We also had Cody in the post-conference talking about some stuff, and that was really interesting because of everything that's been going on. So, okay, let's stop talking about the Royal Rumble, move on to the big news with WWE in the past week. The Rock is now on the board of directors for TKO, which is the big conglomerate that has UFC and WWE. So he's up there. He's, very much a part of the WWE now. So I think we're going to see a lot more of him, and it's going to make things interesting because Triple H on the post-conference talked about how that will help his case because it's not going to be people that just don't understand WWE. He can go to The Rock and say, hey, this is what we want to do, and these are the reasons why, and The Rock will understand it. Having that is a big benefit for WWE and TKO, honestly, to have somebody that understands the business like The Rock does with Triple H. I think that's going to work really well. So I'm very happy for that. Netflix is going to be getting Raw for, I think, 5 to 10 years. It's a crazy amount of money. That's great news. And then there's the big scandal of Vince McMahon, where he's sex trafficking a worker that was with the WWE, and he defecated on her face, allegedly. Oh, man. Oh, man. Vince McMahon is the biggest heel inside and outside of storylines. And he's now gone. I mean, rightfully so. Like, they had to after that. But Brock Lesnar might be part of this as well. I don't think that they've actually mentioned Brock Lesnar. They've just alluded that it is a wrestler that was with the UFC as well, and it's a heavyweight. That's all they've alluded to. And once again, these are all just allegedly happening. There's nothing concrete at this point in time. This all could be fabricated. This all could be maybe half the stuff is true, or this could be all the truth as well. So we're going to have to kind of see what is determined in the next little while. But wow, that's a crazy amount of stuff. I like that when they asked the question to Cody, Cody gave at least an answer, and he did a good job. He really held his own, and he didn't shy away from the question. Triple H really did. They kept asking him, and they asked him basically 3 times. They asked the first 2 times, he kind of gave, I don't want to focus on that. The third question was like, what are you going to do to kind of make sure that this is preventable and not happening? And he said everything. I know it's a crap answer, but we are literally trying to do everything we care about, all of our wrestlers, yada, yada, yada. It was a very corporate answer, but at least it was an answer compared to the other where I just want to focus on the positives. I didn't read the thing. I find it very hard to believe that Triple H didn't take the time to read what was said for the lawsuit. To me, that seems just crazy. Is it a lawsuit? I can't even remember if it's a lawsuit. Just Vince McMahon's in a lot of trouble at the moment for the things that allegedly happened. It's going to be interesting. It's crazy. But at the same time, if the woman that is being, it's so hard to kind of figure out what happened here. If the woman was doing this willingly, and I think that she's saying that she wasn't for certain things, but then some of the texts come out and it seems as though she's very much. Now, yes, you can manipulate a person, you can force them to do things with money and power, but if you accept a position and you accept the money, it's still horrible. Don't get me wrong. If this did happen, if we're taking a situation, let's pretend somebody owns a company, tells somebody that they'll hire them, and then starts asking for a bunch of sexual favors. If this person does this, starts paying this person to do it and hold their power over them, to manipulate them, to kind of force them to kind of do these things, in that sense, that is horribly bad. But if the person accepts and is willingly doing it, it's bad on both parts at that point in time. Now, if there was rape involved, or they weren't giving her a choice, or no means yes, which is some of the things that they're kind of saying happened here, that gets a little bit different. It's a wild mess, and it doesn't look good on anybody that is part of this at all. And it's not just, Vince is obviously going to be the worst one that comes out of this if it ends up being proven to be true. Just a nightmare. An American nightmare. All right, that's it. I've been going on for 29 minutes. That's wrestling. I had a lot to get off my chest for wrestling. So at least I did that at the very end. So for those of you that were interested, there you go. There you got your gist of it there. And we'll talk to you all next time. Thank you all for watching. Next week there won't be nearly as much big wrestling information. Just I had to get this and talk about it because so many crazy things. So thank you all for watching. You haven't bearded in. Beardage.